The night I discovered my daughter's fiancé never loved her was the night I learned some people can smile while calculating the price of a human life. I was standing in my own garden, surrounded by friends celebrating Emily's engagement, when I heard the man who planned to marry my daughter say something I could never forget. Emily is wonderful, but let's be honest. People spend decades trying to build that kind of security. I only have to marry it. He was not talking about my daughter. He was talking about what she represented. Please, before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you are listening from today. My name is Henry Lawson. I am 67 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I was good at judging character. I built a company from nothing. I negotiated difficult deals. I learned that the most dangerous people are not always the loudest ones. Sometimes they are the people who know exactly what to say. Nathan Cole seemed like the perfect man for Emily. He was successful, polite, and respected by everyone who met him. My daughter saw kindness in him. My friends saw confidence. I wanted to see what they saw. Emily was the greatest gift my wife Sarah and I ever received. After Sarah passed away 3 years earlier, protecting Emily became the most important thing in my life. She was 34, an architect, and the kind of person who cared more about helping others than impressing them. She called me every Sunday. She remembered small things. She carried her mother's kindness into a world that often rewards selfishness. That was why hearing Nathan speak about her that night hurt more than I expected. The engagement party had been beautiful. Lights hung between the trees. Music played near the fountain. Emily was laughing with family, while Nathan greeted guests with his perfect smile. I thought I was watching the beginning of her happiest chapter. Then I walked toward the terrace and heard Nathan talking with his friend Victor. They thought nobody was listening. Victor laughed and mentioned the $80 million trust my wife and I had created for Emily. Nathan answered without hesitation. I don't have to spend decades building that kind of wealth. I just have to marry into it. I stood still. In that moment, I understood the difference between a man who loves a woman and a man who sees an opportunity. Nathan believed he was being clever. He believed providing Emily with a comfortable life would somehow justify his intentions. But love is not a business agreement. A daughter is not an investment. A marriage is not a financial strategy. I could have walked around the corner and confronted him immediately. I could have ended everything in front of our guests. But anger makes people act before they understand the full picture. I had spent decades building businesses, and I knew one thing about dishonest people. If you challenge them too soon, they hide. If you give them confidence, they reveal themselves. So I quietly walked away. I returned to the party. I hugged my daughter. I congratulated Nathan. I smiled like nothing had happened. But inside, I made a decision. I would not destroy Nathan with anger. I would let him expose himself, because a person who believes they are winning often becomes careless. Nathan Cole thought he had found the perfect family. He thought my daughter's love would open the door to everything we had built. He thought I was just a father who wanted his daughter to be happy. He was wrong. He had no idea that the moment he reduced my daughter to a number, he started creating the evidence that would eventually reveal who he truly was. I spent the entire night after the engagement party thinking about one question. How could someone look at my daughter and see a fortune before seeing a person? The answer was painful because I knew exactly why Nathan had chosen Emily. She was kind. She was trusting. She believed the best in people. Those qualities made her beautiful, but they also made her vulnerable to someone who knew how to hide behind a perfect image. Emily had always been the center of my world. She was my only child, and from the moment she was born, Sarah and I built our lives around giving her a better future than the one we had. Sarah used to say that children are not meant to inherit our dreams. They are meant to have the freedom to create their own. That belief shaped every decision we made. When Sarah passed away 3 years earlier, the house became quieter. But Emily somehow carried pieces of her mother everywhere she went. The kindness, the patience, the ability to make people feel valued. Emily was 34 years old and worked as an architect. She could have chased expensive projects and built a name among wealthy clients, but she chose something different. She designed homes for families who needed them. She volunteered with community housing programs. She never measured success by the size of a paycheck. She measured it by the lives she touched. That was the person Nathan had chosen to marry. At least, that was what Emily believed. The truth I heard behind those stone columns was something completely different. Nathan was not thinking about building a life with Emily. He was thinking about gaining access to the life Sarah and I had spent decades creating. The $80 million Lawson family trust was not something we created to make Emily wealthy beyond imagination. It was created because we knew life could change without warning. Sarah and I had spent 40 years building our company. We missed vacations. We worked weekends. We spent countless nights worrying about employees, contracts, and whether the decisions we made would protect everyone depending on us. The money represented sacrifice. Every dollar carried a memory. Every investment represented a choice we made when building a future for our family. Sarah always reminded me that wealth without purpose meant nothing. That was why the trust had strict protections. Emily would always have security, but nobody would ever be able to control her through money. That was the promise we made to our daughter. Looking back, I think that was exactly what Nathan disliked most. He did not just want Emily's wealth. He wanted influence over it. He wanted to become the person standing closest to the decision-making process. And because he was intelligent, he understood something important. The easiest way to gain control over someone's assets was not to fight against the person who owned them. It was to become someone they trusted. The morning after the engagement party, I sat on the back patio where Sarah and I used to drink coffee together. I thought about telling Emily everything immediately. Every part of me wanted to protect her from another moment of pain. But I also knew my daughter. If I approached her without proof, she would not hear a warning. She would hear an accusation against the man she loved. Nathan had spent months building her trust. I could not destroy that trust with only a conversation. I needed the truth to speak louder than my fear. So I made a decision that was difficult for any father. I would step back. I would watch. I would let Nathan show Emily who he really was, because the person I needed to protect my daughter from was not someone standing outside the family. He was someone already being invited inside. And before I could expose him, I needed to understand exactly how far he was willing to go to reach what he believed would soon belong to him. Henry kwirt dent kong noi suthat ver Emily, ngalip tuk. Viong hier, kermsuk, karther kiern kon gai barvade Nathan, thavi ninthe suthat. Ung team dane Arthur Bennett, lut sus yading lo num, der chia ser moitchuin va team kite sakmin Nathan. Arthur Quien, Henry, Kongnen Vikmat Nathan, Manen Tau Kohoi Derangta Tu Boklo Barnchert. Today, Kotrien Triern to Noi Dao, Korngui Cha, Sangmut Kuk Diu Tra Umtum. I did not sleep much that night. Not because I was angry, although I had every reason to be. Anger is easy. It makes you feel powerful for a moment. But anger also makes people careless. And careless decisions are exactly what dishonest people hope for. I had spent my entire life building a company by understanding one simple truth. The person who reacts first does not always win. The person who understands the situation usually does. So instead of calling Emily that morning and telling her what I heard, I did something much harder. I waited. I sat in the quiet kitchen, where Sarah and I had shared thousands of conversations and thought about the daughter we raised. Emily was not foolish. She was not weak. She was simply in love. And when someone is in love, even the truth can sound like an attack if it comes from the wrong place. If I told her that Nathan was using her without enough proof, there was a chance she would not see a father trying to protect his daughter. She might see a father trying to destroy the man she planned to marry. I refused to become another obstacle between Emily and her own happiness. But I also refused to stand by while someone treated her future like a business opportunity. That was why I drove to Arthur Bennett's office the next morning. Arthur had been our family's attorney for more than 30 years. He helped Sarah and me build the Lawson family trust. He helped us protect our company. More importantly, he knew us before the money mattered. He knew the sacrifices behind everything we built. When I walked into his office without an appointment, he immediately knew something was wrong. "Henry," he said, looking up from his desk, "you only visit without calling when something serious has happened." I closed the door behind me and sat across from him. I think someone wants to marry my daughter for $80 million. Arthur did not react the way most people would. He did not become angry. He did not immediately ask who the person was. He simply folded his hands and waited. That was one of the reasons I trusted him. He understood that facts mattered more than emotion. I told him everything: the engagement party, the conversation behind the stone columns, Nathan's exact words, Victor's laughter, the way Nathan spoke about Emily as if she were an opportunity instead of a person. When I finished, Arthur remained silent for several moments. Then he asked the only question that mattered. "What do you want to do?" I looked out the window at the city below. I had imagined this moment many times during the drive there. I thought I would say I wanted Nathan exposed. I thought I would say I wanted him away from Emily. But the words that came out surprised even me. I want certainty. Arthur studied me carefully. "You don't want revenge?" "No." I shook my head. "I want Emily to know the truth, not because I told her, because Nathan showed her." A small smile appeared on Arthur's face. I had seen that expression before. It was the look of someone who had just found the right direction. "Then we don't expose Nathan," he said. "We let Nathan expose himself." I leaned forward. "How?" Arthur explained something I already understood instinctively. People who pretend to be someone they are not eventually become careless when they believe they are close to getting what they want. Nathan had spent months creating an image of the perfect future husband. The best way to understand him was not to pressure him. It was to give him opportunities. Opportunities to make choices. Opportunities to reveal his priorities. "We cannot prove someone's intentions from one conversation," Arthur said. "But we can create situations where actions become impossible to explain away." I nodded slowly. That was exactly what I needed. Not a confrontation, not a family argument. A clear picture. Before I left his office, Arthur reminded me of something important. "Henry, be careful. If Nathan realizes you are suspicious, he will become much harder to read." I understood. A person who knows they are being watched becomes cautious. A person who believes they are trusted becomes honest about who they are. At least, they believe they do. As I drove home, I thought about the man my daughter loved. I thought about the smile he wore, the perfect manners, the carefully chosen words. Everything about Nathan was designed to make people comfortable. But I had learned something after decades of business. A polished surface does not tell you what exists underneath. You have to look deeper. That afternoon, I called Nathan. My voice was calm, friendly, almost like nothing had changed. "Nathan," I said, "do you have time for lunch tomorrow? There is something I'd like to discuss before the wedding plans become too busy." He accepted immediately. I heard the confidence in his voice. He believed he was about to receive something valuable. He had no idea the meeting was not an invitation into my family. It was the beginning of discovering exactly who he was. One thing I learned over decades of building a company is that people rarely reveal who they are when they feel threatened. They reveal themselves when they feel comfortable. That was why Arthur and I made a decision that required more patience than anger. We would not attack Nathan. We would not accuse him. We would not give him a reason to become careful. Instead, we would give him exactly what he wanted most, the feeling that he was getting closer. Over the next several days, Arthur reviewed every part of the Lawson family trust. He examined the documents Sarah and I had created years earlier. He reviewed the protections we placed around Emily's inheritance. Every decision we made had been designed for one purpose: to give our daughter security without allowing anyone else to control her life. The trust was never the problem, Arthur told me one afternoon. The problem is what someone believes they are entitled to. I understood what he meant. Money itself does not change people. It reveals what was already there. Nathan did not become interested in Emily because of the trust. The trust simply gave him a reason to show what he truly valued. Arthur prepared a series of legitimate opportunities for Nathan to become involved with the family foundation. Nothing secretive, nothing dishonest. If Nathan truly cared about Emily and wanted to contribute to the family, he would respond one way. If he only cared about access and control, he would respond another way. The difference would reveal everything. "We need him to make choices," Arthur said. "Not mistakes, choices." That sentence stayed with me, because there is a difference. A mistake can happen in a moment of weakness. A choice shows what someone believes. The first opportunity came through a simple invitation. I asked Nathan to join a discussion about the future of the Lawson Family Trust Foundation. I introduced it as a chance for him to understand the values behind the work Sarah and I had built. I wanted him to see that the foundation was not just money sitting in accounts. It represented years of effort, sacrifice, and responsibility. Nathan arrived exactly on time. He wore a perfectly tailored suit and carried himself with the confidence of someone who believed he belonged in every room he entered. He listened carefully. He asked intelligent questions. He complimented the foundation's charitable work. If someone had met him that day without knowing what I knew, they would have been impressed. That was what made him dangerous. People like Nathan did not succeed because everyone was foolish. They succeeded because they were good at creating the right impression. After the meeting, one of the foundation members told me, "Emily chose a good man." I thanked him. But inside, I wondered how many people had said the same thing about someone who did not deserve it. Later that evening, Nathan called me to thank me for including him. "Henry, I appreciate the trust you are showing me," he said. The word trust caught my attention. It was interesting because Nathan understood the value of trust. He simply seemed to misunderstand whose trust he was receiving. Over the following week, I watched carefully. Nathan started asking more questions. At first, they seemed harmless. He wanted to understand how the foundation operated. He asked about long-term goals. He asked about investment strategies. He asked about future planning. None of those questions were wrong by themselves. In fact, they were exactly the kind of questions a responsible person might ask. But patterns matter. His questions slowly shifted away from purpose and toward control. He was less interested in why the foundation existed and more interested in how decisions were made. He wanted to know who approved changes, who had authority, who could access information. I noticed because I had spent my entire career listening to people negotiate. There is a difference between someone trying to understand a responsibility and someone trying to understand a position of power. Nathan was interested in the second. I shared my observations with Arthur. He simply nodded. "He is getting comfortable." "Is that what we wanted?" I asked. Arthur looked at me. "Exactly." The hardest part for me was watching Emily remain completely unaware. She would call me excited about wedding plans. She would tell me how thoughtful Nathan had been. She would mention small things he did that made her feel loved. Every time, I listened. Because she deserved to experience the truth without me forcing it on her. A father can protect his child from danger, but he cannot live their life for them. The person Emily chose had to reveal himself through his own actions. Then Arthur prepared the final step. A document that looked ordinary. A declaration of ethics and responsibility required for anyone who would eventually advise the family foundation. It was not unusual. It was not designed specifically for Nathan. Every person involved with the foundation had signed similar documents. That was why it mattered. There was no trap, no deception. Just a clear statement asking one simple thing. Be honest about your intentions and your responsibilities. Arthur placed the document on his desk and looked at me. When people believe they are close to getting what they want, they stop protecting the image they created. I looked at the papers in front of me. Somewhere ahead, Nathan would have a choice. He could read carefully. He could question the responsibility. He could decide whether this was something he truly wanted, or he could rush forward because he saw only the reward waiting at the end. And whatever choice he made would tell us everything we needed to know. I invited Nathan to lunch 3 days after I met with Arthur. I did not invite him because I trusted him. I invited him because I needed to understand what he would do when opportunity was placed directly in front of him. There is a difference between a person who wants to become part of a family and a person who wants to gain access to what that family owns. I needed Nathan to show me which one he was. The restaurant was quiet, the kind of place where people discussed important matters without needing to raise their voices. Nathan arrived exactly on time, wearing a dark suit and the same confident smile that had convinced everyone around Emily that he was the perfect man. We started with simple conversation. He asked about Emily's latest architecture project. He spoke about the wedding. He complimented Sarah's memory and said he wished he had known her. Every word sounded thoughtful. Every sentence sounded carefully chosen. Then I placed my glass down and said, "Nathan, I want to discuss something with you before the wedding becomes even busier." His attention changed immediately. I explained that Sarah and I had created the Lawson family trust, not just to protect money, but to protect Emily's freedom. The purpose was never to make her dependent on wealth. It was to make sure she would always have choices. Nathan nodded. "I think that's admirable," I continued. "At some point, I would like someone younger to understand the foundation and the responsibility behind it. Not ownership, not control, just involvement." For a brief moment, I saw it. A flash of excitement. It disappeared quickly, but I noticed. Nathan leaned forward. "Henry, I would be honored to help," I smiled. "Take your time. This is not something to decide quickly." Most people would hear those words as advice. Nathan heard them as an invitation. He began asking questions. How were decisions made? Who reviewed investments? How were charitable projects approved? Who had final authority? The questions were reasonable. That was what made them difficult. A greedy person rarely asks obviously greedy questions. They ask practical questions. They use professional language. They make ambition sound like responsibility. But after 40 years in business, I knew the difference between someone trying to understand a duty and someone trying to locate power. Nathan was not asking how he could serve the foundation. He was asking how close he could get to controlling it. After lunch, he thanked me several times. He told me he appreciated the trust I was showing him. That word stayed in my mind. Trust. It was interesting how easily people could speak about trust while already thinking about how to benefit from it. That evening, I met Arthur again and explained the conversation. He showed interest, I said. Arthur nodded. "What kind of interest?" I thought carefully before answering. "He cared more about structure than purpose." Arthur smiled slightly. "Then he is showing you exactly what we needed to see." I looked down at the documents on his desk. "I still wish I was wrong." Arthur understood. "Of course you do. This isn't a business partner. This is the man your daughter loves." That was the hardest part. If Nathan had been a stranger, this would have been simple. But he was not a stranger. He was someone Emily trusted. Someone she believed would protect her heart. The following days gave me more answers. Nathan became more interested in family matters. He offered suggestions about the foundation's future. He talked about improving efficiency and modernizing the way assets were managed. Everything sounded reasonable, but every suggestion moved in the same direction. More influence, more access, more control. He was no longer trying to understand the family he was joining. He was trying to understand the system he hoped to enter. I shared everything with Arthur. He reminded me that patience was still our greatest advantage. "Let him believe he is winning," Arthur said. "People are most honest when they think they have already succeeded." I knew he was right. Nathan believed he had convinced everyone. He believed the difficult part was over. He believed marrying Emily would open the door to the life he wanted. What he did not know was that every step he took closer to that door was revealing more about who he truly was. And soon, we would give him one more opportunity, one more choice, one more chance to prove whether he wanted to protect the Lawson family or simply possess what belonged to it. Because the next document Nathan would see would not ask him what he wanted to receive. It would ask him what kind of man he truly was. And that answer would come from his own hand, not from anything we could say. I had always believed that people reveal themselves through their biggest decisions. But after watching Nathan for several weeks, I realized something else. Sometimes people reveal themselves through the smallest moments. A question asked too quickly, a comment made too casually, a reaction they fail to hide because they believe nobody is paying attention. Nathan was becoming comfortable, and that was exactly what Arthur and I needed. After the lunch meeting, Nathan started spending more time around the family. To everyone else, it looked natural. A man preparing to marry the woman he loved and become part of her world. He attended foundation discussions. He asked thoughtful questions. He offered ideas. If someone looked only at his actions on the surface, They would have seen ambition and responsibility. But I had learned to look deeper. Nathan was not interested in understanding the heart behind the Lawson family trust. He was interested in understanding how much influence he could eventually gain from it. He started asking questions about decision-making. Not questions about why Sarah and I created the foundation. Not questions about the people our programs helped. He wanted to know who had authority, who approved changes, who controlled long-term strategies, who had access to important information. Those questions told me more than his words ever could. A person who cares about a responsibility asks how they can protect it. A person who wants control asks how they can manage it. One afternoon, Nathan visited my office and looked through some of the foundation materials I had shared with him. He picked up a report about our housing program and smiled. "This is impressive," he said, "but I think there are ways to make the structure more efficient." I asked him what he meant. He explained that the foundation could benefit from a more modern investment approach. He talked about expanding assets, improving returns, and creating a stronger financial strategy. Everything sounded intelligent. Everything sounded professional. That was why he was dangerous. Nathan was not careless. He was educated. He understood how to make control sound like improvement. I thanked him for his thoughts and changed the subject. He never realized that his answer had already told me what I needed to know. That evening, I told Arthur about the conversation. He listened carefully before saying, "He is no longer trying to prove he belongs. He is starting to act like he already owns a place there." Those words stayed with me, because that was exactly what I had been feeling. Nathan had moved beyond wanting acceptance. He was mentally placing himself inside decisions that had not been offered to him. The hardest part was watching Emily interpret everything differently. She saw a man who was excited about their future. She saw someone willing to learn about her family's values. She saw the person she loved. I saw someone measuring the walls of a house he had not been invited to enter completely. One evening, Emily sat beside me on the patio and talked about Nathan. "Dad, I think he really respects everything you and Mom built." I looked at my daughter and smiled. She was happy, truly happy, and that made everything harder. A father does not want to be right when being right means his child is about to be hurt. I simply said, "I hope you're right, sweetheart." She looked at me carefully. "You still don't completely trust him, do you?" For a moment, I almost told her everything. I almost told her what I heard at the engagement party. I almost told her that the man she loved had reduced her future to a number. But I stopped myself. Not because I wanted to protect Nathan, because I wanted to protect Emily. If she learned the truth, it needed to come with certainty. Not a father's suspicion, not an argument between two people she loved. She needed evidence, the kind of evidence nobody could explain away. Meanwhile, Nathan continued moving closer. He attended meetings. He became more familiar with the foundation's structure. He started speaking about future possibilities as if they were already conversations we had agreed to have. That was when I knew his confidence was growing. He believed the plan was working. He believed my trust in him was increasing. He believed Emily's love guaranteed his place in the family. What he did not understand was that every additional step gave us more clarity. We were not searching for a reason to dislike him. We were discovering the truth he was revealing himself. Arthur reminded me of something important. "Henry, remember, we are not trying to make Nathan fail. We are simply watching what he chooses when given responsibility." I nodded. That was the difference. We were not creating his character. We were observing it, and Nathan was showing us exactly who he was. Soon, Arthur would present him with a simple document, a document that every responsible person would read carefully before signing, a document that would not accuse him of anything, a document that would only ask him to confirm the values he claimed to believe in. And when Nathan put his signature on that page, he would unknowingly create the clearest proof of all. Not because we forced him to, because he chose to. Nathan always believed that confidence could solve almost any problem. He had built his career by knowing what to say, when to smile, and how to make people believe he belonged in every room. But there was one thing he never considered. The more comfortable he became, the more of himself he revealed. After weeks of watching him, Arthur and I were ready for the next step. We did not need Nathan to make a mistake. We needed him to make a choice. A mistake can be explained away. A choice shows who someone truly is. Arthur invited Nathan to my home on a Thursday afternoon. Emily was away meeting with a client, so the conversation could remain focused and professional. Nathan arrived with the same calm expression he always wore. He believed he was moving closer to becoming part of the Lawson family. He had no idea he was about to reveal exactly why he wanted that position. Arthur welcomed him into the library and explained that anyone involved with the Lawson Family Trust Foundation had important responsibilities. The foundation was not simply about managing wealth. It represented the years Sarah and I spent building a future for Emily. It represented trust, responsibility, and protecting something bigger than money. Nathan nodded and agreed with every word. "I completely understand," he said. Then Arthur placed a document on the table. It was a standard ethics and fiduciary responsibility declaration required for anyone who wanted a formal role connected to the foundation. The document explained that anyone involved had to act honestly, disclose conflicts of interest, and never use their position for personal benefit. Arthur told Nathan to read it carefully. There was no pressure, no hidden condition, no trick. Nathan had every opportunity to ask questions or refuse. He picked up the document and began reading. I watched silently. For several minutes he studied each page. But I noticed something. His attention slowed whenever he reached sections about personal benefit and conflicts of interest. Those were not the parts a responsible person would fear. They were the parts that mattered to someone thinking about what they could gain. Finally, Nathan placed the document back on the table. Arthur asked, "Do you have any questions?" Nathan smiled. "No, everything seems reasonable." Arthur placed a pen beside the paper. "Whenever you are comfortable." Nathan did not hesitate. He signed his name immediately. A notary verified the signature, and the document became official. Nobody forced him, nobody misled him. Nathan made the choice himself. After signing, he looked at me with satisfaction. "Henry, I appreciate the trust you are showing me." I looked at him and answered carefully. "Trust is valuable because it has to be earned." He smiled, believing I was complimenting him. He did not understand what I meant. Trust is valuable because when someone breaks it, their own actions reveal the truth. After Nathan left, Arthur closed the folder and looked at me. He signed without hesitation. I nodded, because he saw the opportunity, not the responsibility. Arthur agreed. That document was not powerful because it accused Nathan of anything. It was powerful because it recorded his own promise. He had claimed to value honesty and transparency. He had claimed to understand responsibility. Now, we had a clear record of what he said he believed. The next step would not be about proving our suspicions. It would be about comparing his words with his actions. Nathan Cole believed he had just moved closer to the future he wanted. He believed the door to the Lawson fortune was opening. What he did not realize was that the signature he proudly placed on that page would become the first thing that exposed the difference between the man he pretended to be and the man he truly was. And that difference was exactly what Arthur and I needed. We were not trying to destroy Nathan. We were giving him every chance to prove himself. He simply chose to prove something else. The moment when Emily learned the truth was the moment I had feared most. Not because I was afraid of Nathan anymore. By then, I knew exactly who he was. I was afraid of what the truth would do to my daughter. Sometimes protecting someone means accepting that the truth will hurt them before it heals them. For weeks, Emily had believed she was building a future with a man who loved her. She had imagined a home, a marriage, and a life together. I knew I was about to show her that future had been built on something false. Arthur and I continued gathering everything we needed. The signed declaration was important, but it was only one piece. We wanted Emily to see the complete picture. Not a father's suspicion, not an accusation, a pattern. Nathan continued revealing himself. After signing the ethics document, he became even more confident. He started speaking about the foundation as if he already belonged in its decisions. He offered suggestions about investments, discussed long-term strategies, and talked about expanding influence. His words always sounded reasonable. That was what made him dangerous. A person looking only at appearances would have admired him. But I had learned to listen differently. Nathan rarely asked about the people behind the foundation. He asked about structure, authority, access. He wanted to understand where the power was located. Then something happened that gave us another piece of the truth. Margaret Ellis, who had worked with our family for 28 years, called me one afternoon. She was not someone who created problems. She was someone who noticed them. "Mr. Lawson," she said carefully, "I think you should know something about Mr. Cole." She explained that Nathan had spent nearly 20 minutes alone in my study while Emily was away. He told her he was looking for an old family photo album. But when Margaret entered the room, the photo albums were untouched. Nathan was standing near my filing cabinet. That detail bothered me, not because he had entered the room. Family members could enter my study. That was not unusual. It bothered me because his explanation did not match his actions. When I told Arthur, he simply nodded. "He's becoming impatient," he said. I looked at him. "Is that good?" Arthur closed the folder in front of him. "Yes. Because patience allows people to maintain a false image. Impatience forces them to reveal priorities." That was exactly what was happening. Nathan believed he was close. He believed the difficult part was over. He believed he had already convinced everyone that he belonged. Meanwhile, Emily still saw the man she loved. That was the hardest part for me. One evening, she sat with me on the patio and asked, "Dad, have you ever felt like someone changed but you couldn't explain why?" I looked at my daughter and realized she was beginning to notice what I had noticed, but I did not answer with anger. I simply said, "Sometimes people show us who they are slowly." She looked away, thinking about my words. The next morning, Arthur and I decided it was time, not to expose Nathan, to let Emily see the truth. We invited her to the house and asked her to meet us in the library. When she arrived, she was carrying a notebook filled with wedding plans. Seeing that notebook almost broke my heart. She was still planning a future with someone who had been planning something completely different. "Dad, what's going on?" I asked her to sit down. "Emily, before I tell you anything, I need you to know one thing. Everything I did was because I love you." Her expression changed. Arthur placed the transcript of Nathan's conversation on the table. Then I played the recording. Nathan's voice filled the room. "Emily's wonderful, but let's be honest. People spend decades trying to build that kind of security. I only have to marry it." Emily froze. She looked at the recorder, then at me. "No," she whispered. I wanted to reach for her hand, but I waited. Some truths have to be accepted before comfort can reach them. She read the transcript line by line. She searched for something that would make it less painful. Some missing context, some explanation. There wasn't one. Then Arthur placed the signed declaration beside the transcript. "Your father didn't want you to believe him because he was your father," Arthur said. "He wanted you to see the evidence because you deserve the truth." Emily looked down at the documents. For the first time, she understood. Nathan was not simply ambitious, he had calculated. And the person he planned to use was the person he claimed to love. The hardest part was no longer proving Nathan's intentions. The hardest part was helping my daughter accept that the person she trusted had never valued her the way she deserved. Nathan arrived at my house that Tuesday afternoon, believing he was about to step into the future he had always wanted. He wore the same confident smile, the same expensive suit, and the same calm expression that had convinced everyone around Emily that he was the perfect man. But this time, he walked into a room where everyone already knew the truth. Emily was sitting beside Arthur in the library. She did not look angry. She did not look confused. She looked like someone who had finally seen something she never wanted to see. Nathan noticed the silence. "What's going on?" he asked. Arthur placed 3 documents on the table. The first was the transcript from the engagement party. The second was the ethics declaration Nathan had personally signed. The third explained the conflict between his promises and his actions. Nathan looked at the papers and smiled slightly. "I think there is a misunderstanding." That was exactly what I expected him to say. People like Nathan rarely admit the truth when a better explanation is still available. "Then explain," Arthur said calmly. Nathan looked at Emily. You know me. You know I would never use you. Emily stared at him for a long moment. Then why did you talk about me like I was something you could acquire? Nathan's expression changed. For the first time, he did not have an immediate answer. He tried to explain that he was talking about building a secure future. He said he wanted to protect the family. He said his words had been taken the wrong way. But the problem was not one sentence. The problem was every choice that followed. He asked about authority before responsibility. He cared about access before understanding. He signed a document promising honesty while believing nobody would ever question his intentions. Arthur pointed to the declaration. You read this document, you understood it. Nobody forced you to sign it. Nathan became quieter. He knew the truth was no longer something he could simply talk around. Emily looked down at the engagement ring on her finger. I watched the moment she understood that the hardest part was not losing Nathan. It was accepting that the person she loved had never truly seen her the way she saw him. Slowly, she removed the ring. She placed it on the table beside the documents. I kept hoping there was something I didn't know, she said. I kept hoping there was an explanation that would make this different. Nathan stepped closer. Emily, please. She shook her head. I don't need another explanation. I need to accept what you showed me. Those words ended the conversation, because Nathan could defend his intentions. He could explain his decisions, but he could not change the pattern. He had revealed what mattered most to him. When Nathan left the library, he was no longer the confident man who entered the house. He walked away without the future he believed was guaranteed. The marriage, the trust, the place inside our family he thought he had already earned. I watched the door close behind him and realized something important. The purpose was never to destroy Nathan. It was to make sure Emily had the chance to choose her own future. For weeks, I carried the burden of knowing the truth before she did. Now that burden was gone. The truth was no longer mine. 6 months later, I realized something important. The hardest part of betrayal is not discovering the truth. The hardest part comes after. It is waking up the next morning and learning how to live with the reality that the future you imagined will never happen. Emily canceled the wedding. She returned the invitations, packed away the plans, and slowly began rebuilding the life she thought she had lost. At first, I wanted to protect her from every painful moment. That instinct never leaves a father. But Emily surprised me. She told me she did not want to spend her life running from what happened. She wanted to learn from it. That was when I knew my daughter was stronger than even I realized. Nathan disappeared from our family almost immediately. There were no dramatic public statements, no arguments, no need for them. People in professional circles talk quietly, and trust is difficult to rebuild once people begin questioning someone's intentions. Nathan had built his reputation on confidence and intelligence. But reputation depends on something far more fragile than talent. It depends on trust. And once people began wondering whether his relationships were based on opportunity instead of loyalty, doors slowly started closing. I never celebrated that. Watching someone face consequences is not the same as enjoying their failure. I did not want Nathan's life destroyed. I wanted Emily's life protected. There is a difference. Emily eventually moved forward. She returned to her architecture work and started focusing on projects that reflected who she truly was. She became involved in community housing again, designing spaces for families who needed a new beginning. One afternoon, she told me something I will never forget. Dad, I think I was more afraid of admitting I was wrong than losing him. I understood exactly what she meant. Sometimes people hold on to the wrong person because accepting the truth means accepting that their dreams have changed. But changing direction is not failure. Sometimes it is the first honest decision we make. I retired from most of my business responsibilities soon after. For decades, I measured my life by what I built. The company, the trust, the security I created for my family. But after everything happened, I understood something different. The greatest thing I ever built was not a business. It was the relationship I had with my daughter. Money can protect people from certain problems. It can create opportunities. It can provide comfort. But money cannot create loyalty. It cannot create love. and it cannot reveal someone's heart until there is something to gain. Sarah always believed that character mattered more than success. After all these years, I finally understood why. A person can say anything when they want something from you. They can promise forever. They can speak about love, family, and commitment. But the truth appears when they believe nobody is watching. Nathan thought he was the smartest person in the room because he knew how to hide his intentions. He never understood that patience reveals more than confrontation ever could. I did not defeat him with anger. I simply gave him enough time to show everyone who he was. Looking back now, I do not regret waiting. I do not regret gathering evidence. And I do not regret protecting Emily the way I did. A father cannot choose every person his child loves. A father cannot prevent every heartbreak. But a father can make sure his child has the truth when it matters most. Today, when I walk through the garden where Emily's engagement party was held, I do not think about Nathan anymore. I think about Sarah. I think about the promise we made to protect our daughter. And I think about how close Emily came to building a life with someone who saw her value only through what she possessed. If there is one lesson my years have taught me, it is this: never confuse someone's attention with love. Some people are attracted to your heart. Others are attracted to what your heart has built. The difference may not appear at first, but eventually, everyone reveals what they truly value. And when they do, believe them. Because the people who deserve a place in your life will never make you feel like something they can own. They will make you feel like someone they are grateful to have. And that is worth far more than any fortune.